Marcus Wellington stepped into the airport terminal with tired eyes. The night before had been long but wonderful. He had spent hours at a charity event, talking to people and raising money for students who needed help paying for college. By the end of the night, they had raised over $3 million. Marcus felt good about that, even though his feet hurt and he desperately wanted to sleep. He looked down at his clothes. A simple gray hoodie, comfortable jeans, and white sneakers. Nothing fancy. After the formal event where he had worn a tuxedo all night, he just wanted to be comfortable for the 6-hour flight home to Los Angeles. He pulled his small carry-on bag behind him and headed toward his gate. At 32 years old, Marcus had built something incredible. His company, Wellington Industries, created artificial intelligence software that helped hospitals, schools, and businesses work better. He had started the company in his tiny apartment just 8 years ago. Now it was worth over $1 billion, but Marcus never forgot where he came from. He grew up in a small apartment in Chicago with his mother, who worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. Every dollar he made now he tried to use to help others like her. The gate area was busy. People rushed around with bags and coffee cups. Children cried. Announcements echoed through the speakers. Marcus found a quiet corner and sat down. He pulled out his phone and checked his emails. There were 43 new messages. He sighed and started reading through them. "First-class passengers, we are now ready to begin boarding," a voice announced over the speaker. Marcus stood up, grabbed his bag, and walked to the line. He handed his boarding pass to the gate agent, a young woman with bright red hair. "Good morning, Mr. Wellington," she said with a warm smile. "Have a wonderful flight." "Thank you," Marcus replied, smiling back. He walked down the jet bridge and entered the plane. The first-class cabin was beautiful. Wide leather seats, extra legroom, soft lighting. Marcus had flown in economy for years. Cramped in middle seats, his knees pressed against the seat in front of him. Even now, with all his success, first class still felt a bit strange to him. But for long flights, it made a real difference. He found his seat 2A right by the window. Perfect. He could lean against the wall and maybe get some sleep. Marcus lifted his bag into the overhead bin and settled into his seat. The leather was soft and cool. He pulled out his laptop, thinking he might get some work done before takeoff. As more passengers boarded, Marcus noticed a flight attendant standing near the front of the cabin. She was a woman in her 40s with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform was perfect, not a wrinkle anywhere. Her name tag read Patricia Chen. She watched each passenger as they entered, her eyes sharp and examining. When her gaze landed on Marcus, something changed in her expression. Her smile faded just a little. Her eyes narrowed. She looked at him from head to toe, taking in his casual clothes, his hoodie, his sneakers. Then she looked away and whispered something to another flight attendant, a younger man with blonde hair. Marcus noticed, but tried not to think about it. He had seen that look before, too many times. The look that said, "You don't belong here." The look that questioned whether he could really afford that seat. The look that made assumptions based on nothing but the color of his skin and his choice of comfortable clothes. He opened his laptop and tried to focus on his work. He had a big presentation next week for the company's board of directors. New ideas, new products, new ways to help people, but it was hard to concentrate. He could feel Patricia's eyes on him, watching him. More passengers filled the cabin. A white man in gym clothes and a baseball cap sat across the aisle in seat 2C. He nodded at Marcus in greeting. Marcus nodded back. A woman in her 60s wearing a velvet tracksuit took seat 3A. Another man in jeans and a t-shirt settled into seat 4C. Everyone dressed casually, just like Marcus, but Patricia didn't look at them the way she looked at him. Patricia moved through the cabin, checking overhead bins, greeting passengers with her professional smile. When she reached Marcus's row, her smile disappeared. "Good morning," Marcus said politely. "Morning," Patricia replied, her voice cold. She didn't make eye contact. Instead, she stared at the overhead bin above his seat as if checking that it was properly closed. It was. But she stood there for a moment anyway, her presence uncomfortable and deliberate. Marcus went back to his laptop. He could feel tension building in his shoulders. He hated this feeling, no matter how much money he made, no matter how many awards he won, no matter how many magazine covers featured his face. Moments like this reminded him that some people would always see him as less than, as someone who didn't belong. The blonde flight attendant, whose name tag read Jason, stopped by Marcus's seat. "Can I get you anything before we take off, sir?" Jason asked with a genuine smile. "Just some water, please," Marcus said. "Of course, right away." Jason walked away and Marcus noticed Patricia watching the interaction from the galley. She said something to Jason when he arrived to get the water. Jason looked confused and shook his head. Patricia's face tightened, her lips pressed into a thin line. Jason returned with a bottle of water and a glass filled with ice. "Here you go, sir. Let me know if you need anything else." "Thank you," Marcus said. As the last passengers boarded, Marcus tried to relax. Maybe he was reading too much into things. Maybe Patricia was just having a bad day. Maybe her look had nothing to do with him at all. He wanted to believe that, but experience had taught him otherwise. The captain's voice came through the speaker, welcoming everyone aboard and announcing the flight time. 6 hours and 12 minutes to Los Angeles. Marcus fastened his seatbelt and leaned back in his seat. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He thought about his mother. She would tell him to stay calm, to keep his dignity, to remember who he was. She had raised him to be strong in the face of ignorance, to respond to hate with grace. He could hear her voice in his head. "Baby, you are worth more than their small minds can understand. Don't let them make you small too." Marcus opened his eyes and looked out the window. The ground crew moved around the plane, loading bags and checking equipment. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful. He tried to focus on that beauty instead of the uncomfortable feeling in his stomach. The plane began to push back from the gate. The engines hummed to life. Marcus put his laptop away and prepared for takeoff. He loved this moment when the plane accelerated down the runway and lifted into the air. That feeling of leaving the ground, of floating, of possibility. But today that feeling was mixed with something else. A sense that this flight was going to be different. That the look Patricia had given him was just the beginning of something worse. Marcus didn't know how right he was. The plane climbed smoothly into the morning sky. Marcus watched through his window as New York grew smaller below. Buildings turned into tiny blocks. Cars became dots moving along thin lines of highway. He always found it peaceful, seeing the world from up here. Everything looked simpler from 30,000 feet. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Patricia immediately stood up and began her service routine. Marcus saw her moving through the cabin with a tray of drinks. That same professional smile on her face as she spoke to other passengers. When she reached the man in gym clothes across the aisle, she was all warmth. "Good morning, sir. What can I get you to drink?" "Coffee black, please," the man said. "Excellent choice. I'll have that right out for you." She moved to the woman in the velvet tracksuit. Same warm smile, same pleasant voice. But when she turned to Marcus's row, the smile vanished like someone had flipped a switch. "What do you want?" she asked Marcus. Not "what can I get you?" or "what would you like?" Just "what do you want?" Her tone was flat, almost annoyed. Marcus looked up at her calmly. "Orange juice, please." Patricia nodded without a word and moved on. Marcus noticed the man across the aisle staring at the interaction with raised eyebrows. When their eyes met, the man gave Marcus a look that said, "Did that really just happen?" Marcus gave a small shrug. Yes, it really happened. It happened all the time. 15 minutes passed. Patricia delivered drinks to everyone else in first class. Coffee, tea, juice, champagne. Everyone got their orders. Everyone except Marcus. His seat tray remained empty while passengers around him sipped their beverages. Jason, the blonde flight attendant, noticed. He walked over with a concerned expression. "Sir, did you get your orange juice?" "Not yet," Marcus said quietly. "I'm so sorry about that." "Let me get it for you right now." Jason rushed to the galley. Marcus could see him talking to Patricia, who waved her hand dismissively and said something Marcus couldn't hear. Jason's face showed confusion, but he poured the orange juice himself and brought it back to Marcus. "Here you go, sir. I apologize for the delay." "It's not your fault," Marcus said. "Thank you." Jason walked away, but Marcus saw him glance back with a troubled expression. Patricia stood in the galley with her arms crossed, watching Marcus with cold eyes. Marcus tried to ignore her. He opened his laptop again and pulled up his presentation. Charts, graphs, data about how their new AI system could help doctors detect diseases earlier. Important work. Work that mattered. He needed to focus on this, not on Patricia's attitude. But 30 minutes into the flight, Patricia appeared beside his seat. She stood in the aisle, her posture stiff and formal. "Excuse me," she said loudly, loud enough that several passengers turned to look. "I need to see your boarding pass." Marcus looked up at her, confused. "My boarding pass?" "Yes, there may have been a seating error. I need to verify you're in the correct seat." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Here it was. The moment he had sensed coming since he first boarded. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and opened the airline app. His boarding pass appeared on the screen. First class, seat 2A, Marcus Wellington. He held the phone up for Patricia to see. She leaned in close, studying the screen like a detective examining evidence. Her eyes moved over every detail. The seat number, the passenger name, the confirmation code. She took so long that Marcus felt like he was being interrogated. "How did you get this ticket?" Patricia asked. "I bought it," Marcus said simply. "Did you use points? Was this an upgrade?" "No, I purchased it." Patricia's lips pressed together. These seats are very expensive. The cabin had gone quiet now. Other passengers weren't even pretending not to watch. An older white woman in seat 3C looked shocked. The man in gym clothes stared with his mouth open. A young woman in seat 4A had her phone out, and Marcus realized she was recording. "I'm aware of the cost," Marcus said, keeping his voice level and calm. "I bought the ticket 3 days ago. Is there a problem?" "I just find it unusual," Patricia said, her voice dripping with suspicion. "Someone dressed like you in first class. It raises questions." "Questions about what?" Marcus asked. He knew the answer, but he wanted her to say it. He wanted her to admit what this was really about. Patricia didn't take the bait. Instead, she switched tactics. "Your attire is inappropriate for first class." "My attire?" "Yes, we have standards here. Some passengers have expressed discomfort." Marcus glanced around the cabin. Every passenger he could see was watching with expressions of shock and disbelief. No one looked uncomfortable except Patricia. "Which passengers?" Marcus asked. "That's confidential," Patricia snapped. "I see," Marcus said. "And what is the dress code policy for first class?" Patricia hesitated. "Business casual at minimum. Can you show me where that policy is written?" Another hesitation. Longer this time. "It's a courtesy guideline." "A courtesy guideline," Marcus repeated. He gestured to the man across the aisle in his gym clothes and baseball cap. "What about him? Is his attire appropriate?" Patricia's face flushed red. "That's different." "How is it different?" "It just is." The older woman in seat 3C spoke up. "Excuse me, but I'm uncomfortable with this conversation. This young man has done nothing wrong. He's been sitting here quietly working on his computer. Why are you harassing him?" Patricia turned to her. "Ma'am, this doesn't concern you." "It concerns all of us," the woman replied firmly. "I know discrimination when I see it." "I am not discriminating against anyone," Patricia said, her voice rising. "I am simply enforcing policy." "What policy?" the man in gym clothes asked. "I'm wearing gym shorts and a t-shirt." "Nobody questioned me." Patricia's face grew redder. "I don't have to explain myself to passengers." "You're explaining yourself to me," Marcus said quietly. "And I'd like to know the real reason you're questioning my presence in this seat." Patricia looked down at him, her eyes hard. "Maybe you would be more comfortable in economy. I could arrange a seat change. We have some available seats in the back." The cabin erupted. Multiple passengers spoke at once. "This is outrageous. Are you seriously doing this?" "I'm recording everything." "This is discrimination, plain and simple." A woman in seat 5A stood up. She was in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. "I'm an attorney," she announced clearly, "and I've witnessed this entire interaction. What you're doing is illegal discrimination. This man has a valid first-class ticket. He has done nothing to warrant this treatment. The only reason you're targeting him is obvious to everyone on this plane." Patricia's hands began to shake. "I'm just doing my job." "No," the attorney said. "You're harassing a paying customer based on racial bias, and you've done it in front of dozens of witnesses." "I need to call my supervisor," Patricia said, her voice now uncertain. "Yes," Marcus said calmly. "Please do that." Patricia turned and rushed toward the galley. Jason stood there looking horrified. The young woman who had been recording stood up and walked toward Marcus. "I got everything on video," she said. "I'm a journalist. If you need it, I have proof of what just happened." "Thank you," Marcus said. His heart was pounding, but he kept his face calm. His mother's voice echoed in his head again. Stay strong. Keep your dignity. The older woman reached across the aisle and touched his arm gently. I'm so sorry you had to experience this. It's not your fault, Marcus told her. But it's all of our responsibility to speak up when we see it, she replied. Marcus nodded. He appreciated her words. He appreciated everyone who had spoken up. But inside he felt tired, so tired. Tired of proving he belonged. Tired of justifying his presence. Tired of being questioned and doubted and treated like a criminal for simply existing in spaces where people didn't expect to see someone who looked like him. He looked at his laptop screen. The presentation about helping doctors save lives. His company that employed 3,000 people. The charity work. The awards. The recognition. None of it mattered in this moment. To Patricia, he was just a black man in a hoodie who didn't belong in first class. Through the galley curtain, he could hear Patricia on the phone. Her voice was urgent, defensive. Marcus took a deep breath and waited. Whatever happened next, he would face it with grace. He would not let her take his dignity. The plane hummed through the sky, carrying them all toward whatever came next. Patricia stood in the galley, her phone pressed against her ear. Marcus could see her through the gap in the curtain. She was speaking quickly, her free hand moving in sharp gestures. Jason stood nearby looking uncomfortable and confused. The first-class cabin remained quiet. All the passengers who had witnessed the confrontation sat still, waiting. The attorney who had spoken up earlier had her phone out, taking notes. The journalist continued recording discreetly. The man in gym clothes shook his head in disbelief, muttering something under his breath. Marcus sat calmly in his seat, but his mind was racing. He had been in situations like this before, though never quite this public. There was the time a store security guard followed him through an expensive boutique, assuming he was going to steal something. The time a valet assumed he was there to pick up someone else's car, not his own. The time a real estate agent suggested he might be more comfortable looking at properties in a different neighborhood. Each time, he had stayed calm. Each time he had proven himself. And each time it had hurt just the same. 5 minutes passed. Then Patricia emerged from the galley, followed by a tall man in his 40s wearing a slightly different uniform. His name tag read Robert Martinez, flight lead. His face was serious, his eyes sharp as he took in the cabin's tense atmosphere. Patricia walked quickly to Marcus's row, Robert following behind her. She pointed at Marcus as if he were an exhibit in a courtroom. That's him, she said to Robert. He's been difficult and disruptive. He refused to cooperate when I asked simple questions about his ticket. He's making the other passengers uncomfortable. Several passengers gasped. The older woman in seat 3C looked ready to explode. That's a lie, she shouted. He has been nothing but polite. She's been harassing him since we took off, the man in gym clothes added. Robert held up his hand. Please, everyone, let me handle this. He turned to Patricia. Go back to the galley. I'll speak with the passenger. Patricia opened her mouth to argue, but something in Robert's expression stopped her. She turned and walked away, her spine rigid with anger. Robert moved closer to Marcus. His face was stern, but his eyes were different from Patricia's. There was no prejudgment there, no coldness. Just professional concern. Sir, I'm Robert Martinez, the flight lead on this crew. I apologize for the disturbance. Can you tell me what happened? Marcus took a breath. I boarded the plane with a valid first-class ticket. I've been sitting here quietly working on my laptop. Your crew member, Patricia, brought me my drink late while serving everyone else promptly. Then she demanded to see my boarding pass, questioned how I obtained my ticket, suggested my clothing was inappropriate, and offered to move me to economy. I've done nothing wrong. Robert's jaw tightened slightly. He glanced at the boarding pass on Marcus's phone screen, which was still open. His eyes moved to the name Marcus Wellington. Robert's eyes widened. Just a little, but Marcus saw it. Recognition flickered across his face. Mr. Wellington, Robert said quietly. Marcus Wellington? Yes, Marcus replied. Robert's face went pale. He looked from Marcus to the galley where Patricia stood watching, then back to Marcus. He closed his eyes briefly as if in pain. May I sit down for a moment? Robert asked, gesturing to the empty seat next to Marcus. Of course. Robert sat down and spoke in a low voice. Mr. Wellington, I cannot tell you how sorry I am. This is completely unacceptable. Our airline has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, and what I've just heard described is exactly that. Thank you for acknowledging it, Marcus said. I recognize your name. Robert continued. I actually read an article about you last month in Business Insider, about your company's work with artificial intelligence and medical diagnostics. My wife is a nurse, and she was excited about the technology you're developing. Marcus nodded. We're trying to help doctors catch diseases earlier. It's incredible work, Robert said. He looked genuinely upset now. And instead of being treated with the respect you deserve, you've been subjected to this. It's shameful. The attorney leaned forward from her seat. Young man, she said to Robert, I'm Catherine Morrison. I'm an attorney specializing in civil rights law. I witnessed this entire incident, and I have to say this is one of the clearest cases of racial discrimination I've seen in years. Robert stood up and turned to face her. Ms. Morrison, I don't doubt that for a second. I will be filing a full report the moment we land. This crew member will be suspended immediately, pending investigation. Several of us recorded the interaction, the journalist added, holding up her phone. I work for a national news outlet. This story is important, Robert nodded slowly. I understand, and I won't stop you from reporting it. The public should know when we fail to meet our standards. He turned back to Marcus. Mr. Wellington, is there anything I can do right now to make the rest of your flight more comfortable? Just make sure this doesn't happen to someone else, Marcus said. Someone who doesn't have my resources or platform to fight back. I will do everything in my power, Robert promised. He stood and walked toward the galley. Through the curtain, the passengers could hear him speaking to Patricia. His voice was low but firm. Patricia's voice rose in protest. I was just enforcing standards. There is no dress code in first class. He was acting suspicious. He was sitting quietly in his seat. I have a right to question passengers. You have a responsibility to treat all passengers equally, which you failed to do. The argument continued. Jason, the blonde flight attendant, slipped out of the galley and approached Marcus. Sir, I'm so sorry about all of this, he said quietly. I knew something was wrong when she wouldn't let me give you your orange juice right away. She said you didn't belong up here. I should have said something. It's not your fault, Marcus told him. She's your supervisor. Speaking up isn't always easy. But it's the right thing to do, Jason said. I should have done it anyway. Robert emerged from the galley, his face set in hard lines. He walked to Marcus's seat again. Mr. Wellington, Patricia Chen has been removed from service for the remainder of this flight. She'll be confined to the crew rest area. Another flight attendant from economy will come up to assist. Again, I cannot apologize enough for what you've experienced. I appreciate that, Marcus said. Robert made an announcement to the entire first-class cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize for the disturbance you've witnessed today. This airline is committed to treating every passenger with dignity and respect, regardless of race, religion, gender, or any other factor. We failed to meet that standard today, and I'm deeply sorry. If anyone has concerns or wishes to file a report, please see me before we land. Several passengers nodded. The older woman gave Robert an approving look. As Robert walked away, the attorney, Catherine Morrison, moved to the empty seat next to Marcus. May I? She asked. Please, Marcus said. She sat down and handed him a business card. Mr. Wellington, I want you to know that what happened here is actionable. If you choose to pursue legal action, I would be honored to represent you. Pro bono. Marcus looked at the card. Catherine Morrison, partner, Morrison & Associates, Civil Rights Law. I appreciate that, he said. I need to think about it. Of course, Catherine said. But I want you to understand something. This isn't just about you. Every time someone like Patricia gets away with this behavior, it becomes normalized. Other people suffer. People who don't have your success or visibility. People who might stay silent because they think nothing will change. Marcus nodded slowly. She was right. He knew she was right. How many times had he stayed silent himself just to avoid conflict? How many smaller incidents had he let slide because fighting every battle was exhausting? You have a platform, Catherine continued. And sometimes having a platform means you have a responsibility to use it. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you. Marcus looked at her. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with kind eyes and a strong voice. He wondered what battles she had fought in her life. You sound like my mother, he said. Catherine smiled. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She is, Marcus agreed. He looked down at the business card in his hand. I'll think about it. Seriously. That's all I ask, Catherine said. She stood up and returned to her seat. The journalist approached next. Mr. Wellington, I'm Sarah Chen. No relation to Patricia, she added with a slight smile. I write for the Daily Observer. I'd love to interview you about this experience if you're willing. Marcus looked at her. She was young, maybe 25, with earnest eyes and a notepad in her hand. Why? He asked. Because this happens every day, Sarah said. To people in airports and stores and restaurants in their own neighborhoods. But it usually happens quietly. Without witnesses, without video proof. This time dozens of people saw it. This time it's documented. This time it can't be denied or explained away. That makes it important. Marcus thought about that. She was right too. This was a clear, undeniable example of something that usually lived in the shadows. Okay, he said. I'll talk to you. Sarah's face lit up. Thank you. Can I contact you after we land? Marcus gave her his business email. She wrote it down carefully, then returned to her seat. The plane continued flying west, carrying them all toward Los Angeles and whatever consequences would follow. In the crew rest area at the back of the plane, Patricia sat on a small fold-down seat, her hands shaking. Robert had escorted her there himself, his face hard and disappointed. He told her to stay put until they landed, and then he left without another word. Patricia felt sick to her stomach. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. She had been trying to maintain standards. First class was supposed to be special, exclusive for certain types of people. Wasn't that her job? To keep it that way? But the looks on the other passengers' faces haunted her. The shock, the anger, the disgust. Even Jason had looked at her like she was a stranger. And Robert, her supervisor for 3 years, had looked at her like she was something dirty. She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. Maybe if she looked up this Marcus Wellington person, she could find something to justify her actions. Maybe he had a criminal record. Maybe he was lying about buying the ticket. Maybe there was some reason she had been right to question him. She typed his name into Google. The first result made her breath catch in her throat. It was a Forbes article from 2 months ago. The headline read, Marcus Wellington, the 32-year-old billionaire revolutionizing medical AI. Patricia clicked on it with a sinking feeling in her stomach. The article opened with a photo of Marcus. Not in a hoodie this time, but in a sharp navy suit, standing in front of a wall of computer screens. His company's logo was behind him. The article called him a visionary, a genius, a philanthropist. It said his company was worth $1.2 billion. It said he had donated over $50 million to education charities. Patricia's hands began to shake harder. She scrolled down. More photos. Marcus shaking hands with the president at a White House technology summit. Marcus giving a speech at a medical conference. Marcus on the cover of Time magazine with the headline, The Future of Healthcare. Patricia felt like she might throw up. She searched more frantically now. Article after article appeared. Business Insider called him one of the most influential tech leaders of his generation. The New York Times profiled his journey from poverty to success. CNN featured him discussing artificial intelligence ethics. Every major publication seemed to have covered him, and she had treated him like a criminal. Patricia put her face in her hands. What had she done? This wasn't just some random passenger. This was someone important, someone famous, someone with power and influence and resources to destroy her career. But even as that thought formed, something deeper and more uncomfortable stirred in her mind. Would it have been okay to treat him that way if he wasn't rich and famous? Would it have been acceptable if he was just a regular person in a hoodie? Patricia had never thought of herself as racist. She had Asian heritage herself. She had colleagues of different races. She had never used slurs or joined hate groups. But now, sitting alone in this small crew rest area, she had to face an uncomfortable truth. She had looked at Marcus and made assumptions. She had seen a young black man in casual clothes and decided he didn't belong in first class. She had questioned his ticket, his attire, his presence, and she had done it all without thinking twice. Because somewhere deep inside she had believed she was right. She had believed that first class was for a certain kind of person, and he wasn't that kind of person, not because of anything he did or said, but because of how he looked. Patricia started crying. Quiet tears at first, then harder until her whole body shook. Meanwhile, in the first-class cabin, Marcus tried to go back to his work, but concentration was impossible. Other passengers kept approaching him, offering apologies, expressing their support, telling him how brave he was. He didn't feel brave. He felt tired and sad and angry. The man in gym clothes introduced himself as David Chen, a teacher from New Jersey. "I just want you to know," David said. "I'm going to tell this story to my students. I teach high school history, and we talk a lot about discrimination and civil rights. But sometimes kids think that stuff only happened in the past. They need to know it's still happening now." "Thank you," Marcus said. "That means a lot." An elderly black woman from seat 6A made her way forward. She had been quiet during the whole confrontation, but now she reached out and touched Marcus's shoulder. "Young man," she said softly, "I'm 73 years old. I lived through segregation. I remember when people who looked like us couldn't sit in first class at all, couldn't eat in certain restaurants, couldn't drink from certain water fountains, and here you are, successful and brilliant and making a difference in the world, but they still treat you like you don't belong." Her eyes filled with tears. "It breaks my heart, because I thought things had changed more than they have." Marcus stood up and hugged her gently. "Things have changed," he said. "Just not enough. Not yet." She patted his back like a grandmother. "You keep fighting, baby. For all of us." Robert returned to check on Marcus. "Mr. Wellington, I've been in contact with our headquarters. The CEO wants to speak with you personally when we land. If you're willing, of course." "I'm willing," Marcus said. "Also," Robert continued, "I need you to know that this incident will be thoroughly investigated. Patricia Chen's entire employment history will be reviewed. If there are other incidents, other complaints, they will come to light." "Have there been other complaints?" Marcus asked. Robert hesitated. "I can't discuss personnel matters in detail, but I will say that every employee has a file, and sometimes patterns emerge when you look closely enough." Marcus nodded. He suspected this wasn't Patricia's first time making assumptions about passengers. It was just the first time she got caught so publicly. Sarah, the journalist, was typing furiously on her laptop. She had already uploaded the video to her newspaper's secure server. Her editor had called her twice, excited about the story. This was going to be big. Really big. Catherine, the attorney, was also busy. She had contacted her law firm and asked her team to research similar incidents on airlines. If Marcus decided to file a lawsuit, she wanted to be prepared. But more than that, she was thinking bigger. A class action suit, a pattern of discrimination across the entire industry, real systemic change. As the flight continued, word spread to the economy cabin. Flight attendants talked. Passengers texted friends. Social media posts began appearing. Someone in row 23 had a friend who knew Marcus personally and confirmed his identity. By the time the plane was over Colorado, the first-class discrimination was starting to trend on Twitter. In the crew rest area, Patricia had stopped crying. She was reading article after article about Marcus Wellington, not to find dirt on him anymore, but to understand who he was, what he had accomplished, what he stood for. One article particularly struck her. It was an interview where Marcus talked about his mother working 2 jobs to support him, how she cleaned office buildings at night so he could have school supplies, how she never complained, never gave up, always told him he could be anything he wanted to be. Another article discussed his charity work. He had built 3 schools in underserved communities. He funded scholarships for hundreds of students. He donated medical equipment to hospitals that couldn't afford it, and she had treated him like trash. Patricia thought about her own life. Her parents had immigrated from Taiwan with almost nothing. They had worked hard, saved money, built a good life. They had faced discrimination too. She remembered her mother coming home in tears because someone at the grocery store had mocked her accent. She remembered her father being passed over for promotions he deserved. How had she become the person who did that to someone else? The answer was uncomfortable but clear. She had spent so long trying to fit in, trying to be accepted, trying to prove she belonged in professional spaces, that she had started looking down on others the way people had once looked down on her family. She had adopted the same prejudices that had hurt her own parents. Patricia realized she had become the very thing her family had fled from, the very thing that had caused her mother so many tears. She put her head in her hands again, but this time she wasn't crying. She was thinking, really thinking, about who she had been and who she wanted to be, about what she needed to change. The plane began its descent toward Los Angeles. The captain announced they would be landing in 20 minutes. Passengers started putting away their laptops and tray tables. The cabin crew prepared for arrival. Robert came to the crew rest area to get Patricia. "We're landing soon," he said coldly. When we arrive, you'll need to come to the airport office immediately. HR will be there. I know, Patricia said quietly. Robert, I need you to know something. What? I was wrong. Completely wrong. There's no excuse for what I did. I'm not going to try to defend myself or explain it away. I was wrong and I'm sorry. Robert looked at her for a long moment. Tell that to Mr. Wellington, not me. Patricia nodded. She knew Robert was right, but she also knew that an apology wouldn't fix what she had broken. It wouldn't undo the hurt she had caused. It wouldn't make Marcus trust that the next flight would be different. Still, it was a start. The plane touched down smoothly on the runway. As it taxied to the gate, Marcus looked out the window at Los Angeles, his home city. He had left for New York 3 days ago as a successful businessman going to a charity event. He was returning as something different. A symbol, a story, a flashpoint. He didn't want to be any of those things. The airport terminal was chaos. Marcus stepped off the jet bridge and immediately saw them. Reporters, cameras, lights. They were being held back by security, but they shouted questions the moment they spotted him. Mr. Wellington, can you comment on what happened? How do you feel about the discrimination you faced? Will you be suing the airline? Robert placed a gentle hand on Marcus's back. This way, sir. We have a private room arranged. They moved quickly through a side door marked staff only. The noise of the terminal faded behind them. They walked down a quiet hallway and entered a small office. Inside, 3 people waited. A woman in a business suit stood up immediately. Mr. Wellington, I'm Jennifer Park, the airline's regional vice president. I cannot express how deeply sorry I am for what you experienced today. Marcus shook her hand. Thank you. This is David Okonkwo, our head of human resources, and Maria Santos, our chief diversity officer. They all shook hands. Everyone looked serious and concerned. Marcus could tell this was a disaster for them. The videos were already everywhere online. He had checked his phone in the hallway. Twitter was exploding. Instagram was flooded. The story was on every major news website. Please sit down, Jennifer said. Marcus sat in a comfortable chair. Robert stood by the door. Mr. Wellington, Jennifer continued, I want to be clear about our position. What happened to you today was unacceptable. It violated our policies, our values, and basic human decency. Patricia Chen has been suspended without pay effective immediately. A full investigation will be launched. What does that investigation involve? Marcus asked. David, the HR director, leaned forward. We'll review her entire employment history. Interview colleagues. Check if there have been other complaints. Review flight records to see if there are patterns of behavior. We'll be thorough. And if the investigation confirms what we all saw? Marcus asked. She'll be terminated, Jennifer said without hesitation. We have a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. We just failed to catch it before it got to this point, and for that I'm deeply sorry. Maria, the diversity officer, spoke up. Mr. Wellington, I've been in this role for 6 months. I came from another airline where we had implemented comprehensive anti-bias training. I've been pushing for the same here, but it's been slow going. This incident makes it clear we can't wait any longer. What kind of training? Marcus asked. Interactive workshops on implicit bias, scenarios and role-playing, regular refresher courses, real consequences for discriminatory behavior. But I need you to understand something, Maria said, her voice passionate. Training alone isn't enough. We need a culture change. From the top down, from the CEO to every flight attendant. Everyone needs to understand that discrimination isn't just against policy. It's against our core mission of serving all people. Marcus nodded. He appreciated her honesty. Jennifer's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face went pale. The CEO is calling. Mr. Wellington, would you be willing to speak with him? Of course. Jennifer put the phone on speaker. Mr. Hartley, I have Marcus Wellington here with me, along with David Okonkwo, Maria Santos, and flight lead Robert Martinez. A deep voice came through the speaker. Mr. Wellington, this is James Hartley. I'm the CEO of Transglobal Airlines. I've just watched the video of what happened on Flight 447. I'm calling to offer you my personal apology and to tell you what we're going to do about it. I'm listening, Marcus said. First, the employee in question will be terminated. This is not negotiable. Second, I'm committing $5 million to developing a comprehensive anti-discrimination training program for every single one of our 30,000 employees. Third, I would like to invite you to help us design that program. Your company works with AI and learning systems. We need your expertise." Marcus sat back surprised. "You want me to help you?" "Yes, because you understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of this treatment. You can help us make real change. Not just policy change on paper, but real cultural change that affects how our employees think and act." "That's a significant commitment," Marcus said. "This is a significant problem," James replied, "and I'm ashamed it took a public incident to make us face it. But I promise you we will face it. We will do better." Marcus thought for a moment. He could sue them. He could take them for millions. Catherine had made that clear. But would that create real change? Or would it just be a payout that let them move on without learning anything? "I'll consider it," Marcus said. "Let me think about it and talk to some people." "That's all I ask," James said. "Ms. Park has my direct number. Call me anytime, day or night. And Mr. Wellington? Thank you for your grace through this situation. You showed more dignity than we deserved." The call ended. Jennifer looked at Marcus hopefully. "Will you help us?" "I need to process everything first," Marcus said honestly. "This all happened 2 hours ago. I need time." "Of course," Jennifer said. "Take all the time you need. We'll cover any legal fees if you choose to consult with an attorney. We'll also refund your ticket and provide you with a substantial travel credit." Marcus almost laughed. A travel credit. After being humiliated on their plane, they were offering him more flights. Jennifer must have seen his expression. "I know that sounds hollow right now. I'm sorry. We're trying to make this right, but I know nothing we offer can undo what happened." "You're right," Marcus said. "It can't. But what you can do is make sure it doesn't happen to the next person. Or the person after that." "We will," Maria promised. "I give you my word." Marcus stood up. "I need to go home now. I need to talk to my family and my team. I'll be in touch." "Of course," Jennifer said. She handed him her business card. "Again, Mr. Wellington, I'm truly sorry." Robert escorted Marcus through a different exit where a car was waiting. No reporters. No cameras. Just a quiet escape. As the car drove through Los Angeles traffic toward his home in Pacific Palisades, Marcus finally called his publicist. "Marcus," Andrea's voice was frantic. "I've been calling you for an hour." "I know, I'm sorry. Things have been crazy. The story is everywhere. Every major news outlet has picked it up. Your social media has blown up. Everyone wants to interview you. What do you want to do?" Marcus closed his eyes. "I don't know yet." "Well, you need to decide soon. This is a huge moment. You could use this platform to talk about discrimination, about bias, about change, or you could stay quiet and let the story die down. But either way, you need to decide." "I'll call you in the morning," Marcus said. "I need to think." He hung up and looked out the window. The sun was setting over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Beautiful, peaceful, so different from the chaos his life had become. His phone buzzed again. A text from his mother. "Baby, I saw the news. Are you okay? Call me when you can. I love you." Marcus smiled despite everything. His mother always knew when he needed her. He called her immediately. She answered on the first ring. "Marcus? Hi, Mom. Are you all right? I saw what that woman did to you. I'm okay. Tired. Angry. Sad. But okay. I'm proud of you," she said. "You handled yourself with grace. Just like I taught you." "I wanted to yell," Marcus admitted. "I wanted to tell her exactly what I thought of her and her assumptions." "But you didn't," his mother said. "Because you're better than that. You're better than her ignorance." "Well, is being better enough?" Marcus asked. "Or do I need to fight harder?" His mother was quiet for a moment. "Baby, that's a question only you can answer. But I'll tell you what I think. You've been given a platform, not just because you're rich or successful, but because people witnessed an injustice and they care. That's rare. Most discrimination happens in the shadows where no one sees it. This time everyone saw it. That's an opportunity. An opportunity for what? To make change. Real change. Not just for you, but for everyone who comes after you. For every black child who dreams of sitting in first class someday. For every person who's been told they don't belong. You can show them that they do belong, that we all belong." Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. Now go get some rest. Tomorrow is a new day." The car pulled up to his house, a beautiful modern home overlooking the ocean. Marcus thanked the driver and went inside. His dog, a golden retriever named Charlie, bounded up to greet him. Marcus knelt down and hugged him, letting the simple joy of unconditional love wash over him. He made himself dinner, just pasta and salad. Nothing fancy. He ate on his back deck, watching the waves crash against the shore. The moon rose over the water, full and bright. His phone kept buzzing. Text after text, call after call, reporters, friends, business associates. Everyone wanted a piece of his story. But Marcus turned off his phone and sat in the silence. Tomorrow he would deal with everything. Tomorrow he would make decisions about lawsuits and interviews and training programs. Tonight he just needed to be Marcus, not a billionaire, not a symbol, not a story. Just a man who had been hurt and needed time to heal. Meanwhile, back at the airport, Patricia sat in an office with David from HR. Her union representative sat beside her. David had a folder in front of him. Ms. Chen, David said formally, based on the events of today's flight and the video evidence we've reviewed, we are terminating your employment effective immediately. Patricia nodded. She had expected this. I understand. We've reviewed your file, David continued. There are 3 informal complaints from the past 2 years, all involving passengers of color, all describing similar behavior to what happened today. Patricia felt sick. 3 complaints. 3 times she had made someone feel the way she had made Marcus feel today. 3 times too many. I want to apologize, Patricia said quietly. I'm not the person you need to apologize to, David said. I know, but I'm going to apologize to him anyway. I'm going to apologize publicly. Because what I did was wrong and I need to own it. David looked surprised. That's your choice. But I want you to understand that this termination is permanent. You will not work for this airline again. I understand, Patricia said. I deserve that. She left the office and walked through the empty terminal. It was late now. Most flights had departed. The shops were closed. Her career was over. Her reputation was destroyed. Her actions had hurt someone and embarrassed her family and herself. But as she walked toward the exit, Patricia made a decision. She would face what she had done. She would apologize. She would try to learn and grow and become better. It wouldn't fix what she had broken, but it was a start. That night, 2 very different people lay in their beds thinking about the same moment on a plane. One thinking about how to create change from his pain. The other thinking about how to become someone different from who she had been. The story was just beginning. 3 months had passed since that flight. The world had changed for both Marcus and Patricia in ways neither could have imagined. Marcus stood in a conference room at Transglobal Airlines headquarters in Chicago. Around the table sat executives, diversity officers, and training specialists. On the screen in front of them was a prototype of something revolutionary. This is the awareness engine, Marcus explained, pointing to the display. It's an AI-powered training system that puts employees in realistic scenarios where they have to make decisions. But here's the key difference from traditional training. The AI adapts based on their choices, showing them the consequences in real time. He clicked a button. A simulation played on the screen. A flight attendant approached a passenger. Depending on the choices the trainee made, different outcomes appeared. Treat the passenger with respect and the scenario ended positively. Show bias, and the simulation showed the harm caused, not just to that passenger but to everyone watching. It creates empathy, Maria Santos said, watching the demonstration with wide eyes. It makes people feel what their actions cause. Exactly, Marcus said. Because knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are 2 different things. This system helps bridge that gap. James Hartley, the CEO, leaned forward. How long before we can implement this? 2 months, Marcus said. We're finishing testing now. Every one of your 30,000 employees will go through this training. And it won't be a one-time thing. The system will require annual refreshers and random check-ins. This is incredible, James said. But I have to ask, why did you agree to help us? After what happened to you, you could have just sued us and walked away. Marcus was quiet for a moment. My mother told me something. She said discrimination usually happens in the shadows, but what happened to me happened in the light, with witnesses, with video. That's rare, and rare opportunities come with rare responsibilities. He looked around the table. I can't stop every act of bias in the world. But maybe I can help stop some of them. Maybe I can make it a little bit harder for the next Patricia to treat someone the way she treated me. The meeting ended with handshakes and promises. Marcus had spent countless hours working on this project, partnering with psychologists and diversity experts. His company had donated the technology. But more than that, he had given his story, his pain, his experience so that others might learn. As he left the building, his phone rang. It was Sarah Chen, the journalist. "Marcus, I wanted to let you know. I just won the National Journalism Award for my coverage of your story. But more importantly, the series I wrote led to investigations at 6 other airlines. They've all found similar patterns of discrimination. Change is happening." "That's wonderful, Sarah," Marcus said. "Thank you for telling the story, right?" After they hung up, Marcus got into his car. His driver, a kind older man named George, smiled at him in the rearview mirror. "Where to, Mr. Wellington?" "The foundation office," Marcus said. "I have a meeting there in an hour." The Dignity in Transit Foundation had been Marcus's other major project. He had donated $10 million to create an organization that provided legal help and support to people who experienced discrimination while traveling. In just 3 months, they had helped 73 people file complaints and seek justice. Catherine Morrison, the attorney from the plane, was now the foundation's legal director. She worked with a team of lawyers to fight discrimination cases across the country. When Marcus arrived at the office, Catherine greeted him with a warm hug. "We just won another case," she told him. A black family was removed from a flight for no reason. The airline settled for $300,000 and agreed to implement new policies. "That's great," Marcus said. "How's the family?" "They're doing well." But you know what they said? They said thank you for making it possible for them to fight back. They said they felt alone until they heard your story. Marcus felt his chest tighten with emotion. This was why he had chosen to speak out. Not for himself, but for the people who felt alone. Meanwhile, across the country in San Francisco, Patricia Chen sat in a small coffee shop. Across from her sat Dr. Robert Johnson, a psychologist who specialized in racial bias and restorative justice. "How are you feeling about the video you're going to post?" Dr. Johnson asked. Patricia took a deep breath. Scared, ashamed, but ready. Over the past 3 months, Patricia's life had fallen apart. She lost her job. Her story had gone viral. People recognized her on the street and called her terrible names. She deserved it all, she knew that. But she also knew that hiding wouldn't change anything. So she had started therapy. Deep, difficult therapy about her biases and assumptions. She had read books about racism and privilege. She had attended workshops. She had listened to people of color share their experiences. And slowly, painfully, she had begun to understand, not just intellectually but in her heart. She had learned that racism wasn't just about hate. It was about assumptions, about who you trust and who you fear. About who you think belongs and who you question. She had learned that she could be a victim of discrimination herself and still perpetuate it against others. Now, 3 months later, she was ready to speak. She had recorded a video, 12 minutes long. In it, she apologized directly to Marcus, though she had no way to send it to him except to post it publicly. She explained what she had learned about herself and her biases. She talked about how discrimination isn't always intentional, but that doesn't make it acceptable. She encouraged others to examine their own assumptions. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Patricia said in the video. "I don't deserve it, but I'm asking people to do what I failed to do. Look at yourselves honestly. Ask yourself who you trust automatically and who you question. Ask yourself why. And if the answer is uncomfortable, don't look away from it. Face it. Change it." She posted the video that evening. Within hours, it had 1 million views. The comments were mixed. Some people called her fake, said she was just trying to save face. Others said it took courage to admit such deep flaws publicly. Marcus saw the video the next day. His assistant showed it to him, asking if he wanted to respond. Marcus watched it silently. When it ended, he sat back in his chair and thought. Patricia looked different, smaller somehow, humbled. Her eyes were red like she had been crying. Her voice shook when she spoke about what she had done. "Should I issue a statement?" his assistant asked. "No," Marcus said quietly. "She doesn't need my forgiveness to heal, and I don't need to forgive her to move forward. Let her do her work. I'll do mine." But privately, Marcus felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe understanding. Patricia had been trapped by her own biases, unable to see past them until they destroyed everything. In a way, she was a victim too. Not of Marcus, but of the same system that had hurt him. The system that teaches people that some lives matter more than others, that some people belong and others don't. Breaking free from that system required work. Hard work. The kind Patricia seemed to be doing now. 6 weeks later, something remarkable happened. The Airline Industry Association announced new mandatory anti-discrimination training for all airline employees nationwide. The training would use Marcus's AI system. Every major airline had signed on. The announcement made national news. Marcus did interviews explaining the technology and why it mattered. He spoke on television, on podcasts, and newspapers. He told his story over and over, each time hoping it would help someone understand. David Chen, the teacher from the plane who had been wearing gym clothes, did exactly what he had promised. He taught his students about the incident. He showed them the videos. He talked about implicit bias and how ordinary people can do discriminatory things without even realizing it. One of his students, a young black girl named Aisha, raised her hand. "Mr. Chen, has anything like that ever happened to you?" David thought about it. Different things, but yes. People have made assumptions about me because of my race. It hurts every time. What did you do? Sometimes I spoke up. Sometimes I stayed quiet. But watching what happened to Mr. Wellington taught me something. When we see discrimination happen to others, we have to speak up. We can't just watch. "I'm going to remember that," Aisha said. David smiled. "Good, because your generation is going to change things. You're going to make the world better." A year after the incident, Marcus was invited to speak at a conference on diversity and inclusion. The room was packed with business leaders, educators, and activists. He stood at the podium and looked out at hundreds of faces. "A year ago," he began, "I was humiliated on an airplane. A flight attendant looked at me and decided I didn't belong in first class. She questioned my ticket. She suggested I move to economy. She made me feel small." The room was silent. "I could have let that moment define me," Marcus continued. "I could have become bitter or angry or given up. But instead, I decided to let it transform me. Not into a victim, but into someone who could create change." He clicked to a slide showing statistics. In the past year, the awareness engine has trained over 200,000 airline employees. Reported incidents of discrimination have dropped by 40%. That's 40% fewer people being humiliated, 40% fewer people being told they don't belong. The room erupted in applause. "But here's what I want you to understand," Marcus said when the applause died down. "Technology alone doesn't fix this. Training alone doesn't fix this. What fixes this is people choosing every single day to see other people as human beings worthy of respect, to question their assumptions, to recognize their biases and fight them." He paused. "That flight attendant who discriminated against me? She lost her job. Her life was turned upside down. And she deserved consequences for her actions. But I've also watched her spend the last year trying to learn and grow. She's gone to therapy. She's done the hard work of examining her biases. She's spoken publicly about her mistakes." Marcus took a breath. "I don't know if she's truly changed. That's not for me to judge. But I know this. We need more people willing to do that hard work, not just after they're caught, but before they hurt someone. We need people to look in the mirror and ask themselves hard questions about who they are and who they want to be." The speech ended with a standing ovation. But Marcus didn't feel triumphant. He felt tired and hopeful at the same time. After the conference, he flew home to Los Angeles. First class, of course. But this time, when he boarded in his comfortable hoodie and jeans, the flight attendant smiled warmly. "Welcome aboard, sir. It's an honor to have you flying with us today." Marcus smiled back. "Thank you." As the plane took off, Marcus looked out the window at the clouds below. He thought about that day a year ago. The humiliation, the anger, the pain, but also the choice he had made to turn that pain into something meaningful. He pulled out his laptop and opened a document. He was writing a book about his experience, not just about discrimination, but about resilience, about choosing dignity over bitterness, about using your platform for more than just yourself. The title was simple: We All Belong. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Proud of you, baby. You're changing the world." Marcus smiled. His mother had been right all along. Rare opportunities came with rare responsibilities. And he had chosen to accept that responsibility, not with anger or revenge, but with grace and purpose. Below the plane, the country stretched out in a patchwork of cities and fields and mountains. Millions of people living their lives, some facing discrimination every day, others perpetuating it without knowing, and hopefully, slowly, some learning to do better. Change was slow, but it was happening. One conversation at a time, one training session at a time, one person at a time choosing to see the humanity in others. The plane flew on through clear blue skies, carrying Marcus toward home. Toward his dog waiting for him. Toward his work that mattered. Toward a future that, while still imperfect, was a little bit better than before. Because one person had chosen grace over bitterness. Because witnesses had chosen to speak up. Because a terrible moment had been transformed into a movement. And somewhere below, in cities and towns across the country, people were watching videos and attending trainings and questioning their assumptions. Young people like Aisha were learning to speak up. Teachers like David were having important conversations. Attorneys like Catherine were fighting for justice. The ripples from one moment of discrimination were spreading outward, creating waves of change. Not perfect change, not complete change, but real change nonetheless. Marcus closed his laptop and leaned back in his seat. He was tired, but it was a good tired. The tired that comes from doing work that matters, from using pain as fuel for purpose, from refusing to be made small by someone else's ignorance. He closed his eyes and slept peacefully as the plane carried him home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new work, new opportunities to make a difference. But today, right now, he could rest. He had fought the good fight. He had kept his dignity. He had created change, and that was enough.